Hello and welcome back, everybody. So I'm going to be starting off by warning everybody that this is going to be a little bit of a dark video, and I'm not doing this to scare anybody or to discourage people from researching some different spiritual beliefs or any other disciplines for that matter. I am simply expressing myself and demonstrating what I'm seeing sometimes when it comes to not only spiritual sects, but also things like education and some other disciplines, just put it that way. And this video is going to be called Requirements, Deserving, and Suffering. And I'm just going to start off by talking about education, especially when it comes to university or other higher level education. It often happens when people get into university that we get to a point where we're bombarded with information. Not only are we bombarded with information, but we are expected to recall all this information when it comes to exam time. And then they also add stuff like presentations, we have essays and stuff like that. So if you add everything together, we often experience quite a bit of amount of stress when it comes to education, right? And the whole philosophy behind this is deserving something. You need to prove yourself that you deserve this by basically meeting the requirements that people have laid down. And often this is what people experience is some suffering because of all the requirements that we must adhere to in order to eventually end up with our certificate or diploma or whatever it may be. And I know people will come back and say, well, you need to dedicate yourself, you need to be disciplined, you need to show that you're serious about this. And I would say yes, obviously, but the problem is when it comes to the point where people experience trauma and then they suffer, these creates wounds, right? And me, just for an example, when I was in Mount Allison in Sackville, I loved it there. The Sackville is a very nice town, but after I graduated, I have a hard time going to Sackville because I associate that place with stress. And it is quite sad now that because of what I experienced, I now associate the town with the stress, right? In a sense, like the town of Sackville did not do this to me. It is just an establishment that is inside of Sackville. But the fact remains that for me, it is not a pleasant place to go back to. And I believe that the people that started these things, they wanted to make sure that people were dedicated they were serious about this, right? And I understand that, right? You don't want just any regular Joe to come in and then just like want to join university and then only to have them see that, well, I'm not meant for this, right? Because they can't handle it, right? And I understand that, but it's a common theme in society in general where we have to prove ourselves, right? We see this in religion, right? We see this in Catholic, that the whole belief that you are a sinner, and a sinner is somebody that's basically someone no good. And the only way that we can be redeemed from this is if it's God that basically forgives us and grants us grace, so we can eventually get into heaven, in a sense, right? And the people that remain sinners, well, you go to hell. And it's the same concept where somebody will tell you if you deserve it now. And there's a big problem with that, because we're depending on other people to tell us if we're worthy. Now, and some people will say, well, okay, well, you're just talking about education now and and Catholics, right? No, there's many others that do this, right? For a while I was very interested in Buddhism, and I was even looking into getting into some temples, right? Now, I'm not going to drop specific names on the sects and the specific Buddhists that go and follow these rules. But there's some that basically will make you sit and meditate, and the expectations that you should sit and meditate until you reach enlightenment. And there is a sort of like putting a kid in the corner until they learn their lesson, right? And then some other Buddhists, what they do is, if they have the teacher that overlooks people that are meditating, and if they see the meditators stray away from their meditation, so they see somebody that's meditating and they're not really meditating properly, they'll slap or whip these people, right? And then there's other Buddhists, what they will do is they'll make you sit on your legs, cross-legged, and then you're expected to stay there as long as you can. And then these meditators, once they finally end the meditation, they brag about how numb and how much pain they're feeling in their legs. And I hope that you see that there is something wrong with this. That it is not right, and it is not, for me, spiritual at all, to make somebody suffer to the point where they can't feel their legs, or that they deserve to be whipped because they stray from their meditation, right? Or to tell someone that they don't deserve to go to heaven because they're a sinner. And there is more to this, right? Some shamans, or I should say shamanism, some of them are quite harsh again, and they're all about discipline, right? They're all about discipline, all about basically fasting for extended periods of time, isolating them, right? Not being able to communicate or talk, to touch people, or, it can be a whole bunch of different things, right? And there are some even that will make people that want to conduct ceremonies, they'll have to be implanted with hooks all throughout their skin, and then they'll have to hang for a couple of days in order to be able to be granted permission to conduct ceremonies. Now, I don't know how many people have watched the video that I'm talking about here, but there's a video where I talked about wounds, right? I talked about how if we ever reach a point where we can't cope, and then we feel overwhelmed, this creates trauma and wounds. So by engaging into these things, we're creating new wounds. We're creating trauma. And the ego just gobbles that up, right? And then people will brag about how they suffered, and now yes, They're very spiritual now, right? And that scares me, to be honest. Like, it scares me that some people will get into this. And just because of traditions, just because it's the way that it's always been done, they will continue to promote these things. And I want to bring some attention to something that I learned in psychology, which is Stockholm Syndrome. Where if somebody gets abducted, often after a period of time, the person that is abducted will eventually become fond and defend the person that abducted them. So they will basically they'll become friends, and they'll say that, oh, well, I wasn't mistreated too bad by my abductor, right? And this is obviously a way that a person is trying to cope, right? They're trying to cope with the traumatic experience that they've experienced, and then, they befriend their abductor. And there's other things too that are connected to this, and it's hazing. So like in sports, how people that join football teams or whatever other sports, where they humiliate people as their freshman year, right? And they humiliate people, and some people they torture them in a sense, right? And what happens is that if you go through a hazing process and then you experience quite a bit of trauma or abuse, suffering, you will start to defend the group no matter almost what it does. Even if it does terrible things, you will defend the group. And it's because you've experienced so much trauma, so much pain, that you are emotionally invested. You're very invested in this, and you don't want to lose your investment in a sense, right? So you will do anything so that the group keeps on existing. So imagine like how far people could push this, where if somebody that's part of your group and they would kill someone, right? And that they killed someone, but then because you don't want to lose the group that you're a part of, that you will say nothing, right? And all of this is connected to something that is part of science, where science believes that nature is feminine. And in order to obtain the secrets that feminine holds, that nature holds, we need to torture it to the point where it is subdued, and then finally it gives out its secrets. Now, a lot of people probably have heard this, that now researchers have found out that when you torture someone, the information that they provide is unreliable. Now, is it much different than what I've been talking about? Where the information that we've been getting when we're suffering and experiencing trauma, is it reliable information that we're getting? I think it's a valid question. And again, I'm not trying to discourage people from going into Buddhism. I adore Buddhism. But as far as joining a Buddhist temple, be careful. Right? Be careful. Because there's a lot of people out there that are willing to beat you until they deem that you deserve it. And then they'll tell you it's okay, you can reach enlightenment now, right? You can reach peace. You can be connected with, spirit now, because you've showed yourself to be deserving, because you've endured so much, right? So that's about all I have to say about this, and I'm hoping that people that are going to listen to this and they're Buddhists, and then they'll tell me that, oh, they went to a temple and this was not the way that they did it. No, it's not every Buddhist temple that will do this, right? But the fact remains that there are some, right? And the same with like shamanism, right? I'm not saying every single shamanistic faith is like this too, but there are some, right? And we have to be careful, right? Have to be careful that by joining some spiritual faith that we're not going to make things worse in a sense, right? So I hope that you still, despite the somber subject matter here, that you still appreciated that I at least had the courage to speak out because of what I see and how I feel about things, right? And I know that some people will not like me for saying this, and they'll they might hate me because I'm trying to bash their fate. And we get attached to these things that we belong to, right? We feel that they are us, that my spiritual fate is me. How dare you, question Buddhism, or how dare you, it's just a belief that you have. It is not you. Your beliefs are not you. Your thoughts are not you, right? It is just something that you have gotten into, and that's it. It is, you are not Buddhism, right? So if there's anybody that has any questions or comments, I feel that this will probably get some people riled up, and some people will, be typing away here and expressing how they dislike what I had to say. And I'm willing to engage in conversations about this, right? As long as we're all going to be respectful, right? So, thank you all for watching, and until next time.